Everybody, that was so close. Oh, that was a really fun game to watch, though, from the Seattle Kraken. Ultimately, they do fall to the Detroit Red Wings 5-4 in the shootout, but that was a heck of an effort from the Seattle Kraken. The young guys picking up goals, right? Matty Beniers getting a goal, get Shane Wright picking up a pair of goals. Chandler Stevenson does a great job tying the game there. Oh, there's just some good stuff from this Kraken squad. Joey Decord doing what he's done all season long, stepping up, making some huge plays, making some big saves. Fantastic back and forth overtime that just kind of had you at the edge of your seat. I mean, this was a really good game. It was just a fun game. Like I don't know. I'm bummed I wasn't up there for it and to be in the building, because it just feels like one of those games where the energy inside the building must have been pretty electric as all of that was happening. And hey, we talked about it earlier on the pod. I asked the question of, hey, where's this team? They've dug themselves into too big of holes to come out of this year. They're not getting those OTLs. They're not being able to get to overtime. Big difference between last year's squad, this year's squad. It's almost like this team listens to the podcast, which we have talked about several times over the last couple of years. But this one was a good game. It was a fun game. I think it was a great game for the young guys on the Kraken, and that is, of course, fantastic to see, as always. Before I jump into chat and the super chat that is waiting there, I want to thank our wonderful sponsor, Queen Anne Beer Hall. There we go. A little bit different setup for me. Queen Anne Beer Hall there. And big news from the beer hall came out yesterday, and that is that they have announced their third location, and that is going to be the Hall on Occidental. It's going to be right across the street from T-Mobile Park with a grand opening in May. So all of you who enjoy going to Queen Anne Beer Hall pregame or postgame for Seattle Kraken games down there at CPA, you're going to be able to do the same thing for Seattle Mariners games right across the street from T-Mobile Park over the summer, and I can't wait for that. I think that's going to be a lot of fun, especially day game. Go there afterwards, have some fun at the new beer hall location. I think it's going to be really cool. So thanks to them for sponsoring the post game show as always. Like kicking us off with the super chat here. I don't care what anyone has to say. That was the best full game effort we've seen from the Kraken in a long time, and it was one heck of a fun game. It was an incredibly fun game, Light. I'm with you. I also do think that this was a really good effort from the Kraken. This is as close to a full 60 as we have seen for a long time. I know I was talking in Discord with you. I said it felt like their best effort since the Edmonton game, a week or so ago. You correctly pointed out that one had a really rough second period. And yeah, I think this was a better effort than in that Edmonton game. That was just the last time that it felt close to this. But this really did feel like a near complete game effort from the Seattle Kraken. They were kind of always in it. Yes, there was still some defensive lapses in this one, allows Detroit to pick up some goals that, you don't want them to be able to pick up. But Kraken were able to get the scoring again. The young guys are able to go out there, get those goals. Shane Wright, second multi-goal game of the year. Both goals at 5-on-5 too. That's huge for him and what he's got to build. Outside of just scoring on the power play and everything. I just think this game was fun. It was light. You felt like the Kraken were in it all the way through, and that's really important. And that's just something that we haven't always had this season, but I think it's really important for the fans to be able to experience that. That's when sports is at its best, is when games are just kind of fun like this, right? Like this is why we watch sports, is for the entertainment of it, and this was an entertaining game. So I'm right there with you, Light. And then Schultz with the super chat. Faceoffs killed us with PK, a close second. Faceoffs were tough in this one. Let me pull up what their face-off numbers were, because I know what it was earlier in the game, but I don't know what it ended up finishing after the third period and overtime got going. Face-off percentage, 41.4%. Okay, they've survived. They've survived that before. I think it was just some of those key face-offs that they weren't able to get that kind of hurt them. And then, yes, the penalty kill was tough in this one. Detroit's able to get 2 goals on the power play. It's It is what it is. I think we haven't talked about the PK in a while. We haven't necessarily needed to talk about the PK in a little while. That Cider one was pretty tough, kind of off the face off there, and him being able to move and take advantage of maybe Big Rig screening Joey a little bit just because of the timing of the play and everybody coming across the zone off of the face off. It's just kind of one of those tough goals that just happens, right? Like they just happen. It's just unfortunate. But look, it's one where I still feel like the Kraken were in it. They still played, solid throughout. I even thought the Kraken power play looked good tonight, and even though they weren't able to get one, I thought that they had a solid performance out there. And like I said, I just think the Kraken did a good job of hanging in this one, even though they were outshot, outchanced, all of that kind of stuff. I felt like the Kraken did a good job of picking and choosing their counterattacks, right? Their counter punches being thrown back at Detroit, those plays going up against them, trying to attack in transition off of Detroit rushes. I just felt like the Kraken were feeling it a little bit more than normal. Matty Beniers feeling it a little bit more than normal. Had that kind of like swivel, right? Like the closest thing I could think of is like a fish or like maybe a snake, when a snake like really scurries like off into the brush or something. If you've ever seen that, when Matty is feeling it, when he's feeling his game in the offensive zone, he's got the puck and he's kind of circling around in the offensive zone. He does that like little swivel. He's just got that kind of like nervous, manic energy about him, and he kind of just gets that little shuffle to his strides. And that's what I loved about watching him way back in year one when he had that 10-game span at the end of the year where he did score. He scored 9 points in those 10 games. He looked very comfortable being a professional. He looked good in those spots. Matty kind of had that vibe about him again tonight, and I just think it's so awesome to see that from him, and the confidence that he's obviously built with the success he's been having here recently, post Kako trade, and them being paired up and them developing what they've developed. Great play from Kako to give Matty that goal earlier as well. Just great way to stick with the play, stick with the pass on that the second pass, and to go around the net there, just thinking about the net front. It was a really good one. It was a good one for sure. Jason, can we just decline shootouts? They've been painful to watch. It is a little tough. Kraken don't have one of those like kind of skill guys that's going to say pull off a move like Patrick Kane had in the shootout there. Like that's just not really the vibe of this team. They got guys like Jared McCann or an Ellie Tolvanen who can certainly snipe the puck, but they're not necessarily going to be those kind of soft hands guys. So it can be a little tough with them in the shootout. Then we've talked about it in the past for, not obviously, I don't think it was an issue tonight. I mean, Joey did a great job on the first save. Patrick Kane just did Patrick Kane things on the second one. But we've kind of, we've talked about it in the past. It seems like Joey Decord's great with defending breakaways, saving breakaways during a game, and then you get to the shootout and maybe that same stuff isn't there for him. But I thought Joey had a good performance tonight in the shootout. Daniel, great comeback. Really hoping for a Shane OT winner. I know John was trying to speak it into existence too on the broadcast. Forsland, oh man, it would have been a fantastic moment for him, and it would have been a great story as well for him to be able to pick that one up. And I really credit Coach Dan Bausma for Matty and Shane going out there in the shootout, right? Rewarding the guys that have had success tonight and giving them that opportunity, putting Shane out there in overtime. I like that. I like that Dan has, is, like I said, rewarding the play from the players that are giving it. I think that that's something that the Kraken need to do a little bit more, and I think they'll probably do down the stretch here as well. Carl, Shane Wright should play all 60 minutes. Shane, I mean, he was just a beast tonight. I did like him on that line with Andre Burakovsky and Jared McCann. I do think that line kind of worked. They were finding ways of making things work. I know Shane, he played just a hair under 15 minutes, 14:56. You'd obviously love to see him get more ice time than that. Tough with Matty and Chandler Stevenson both having over 21 minutes. Tough to give, another center that much more opportunity. And, Matty was playing well tonight. Chandler Stevenson, he played one of his better games as well. So it is tough for Shane to get that ice time that we all kind of want him to have. That shootout was sad. 2 out of 3 didn't even actually shoot the puck. Just sucks to have the great comeback end on that flat of a note. They got to put in the defenseman, and I'm sure RJ will talk about it once he joins us from Climate Pledge in a little bit. But it sounds like the defensemen are the ones that we need in the shootout. And having been at practices and stuff this year, there is something to that. So maybe we'll see that in the future. Although, like I said, I do like rewarding the players who performed in this game, and we're kind of feeling it. I don't have an issue with Dan doing that. James, didn't know the Kraken were allowed to have an entertaining overtime. It was a really good overtime. It wasn't just like a possession battle between both teams. Like they were actually going for it, and it felt a lot of fun. Like I really liked that. I'm definitely happy about it for sure. Julia, felt like the team really needed that one. I hate Patrick Kane, but also they looked so good in overtime and at the end of the third. Where has the team been all season? It has been missing. Like this has been one of those things that has been missing from the group. I talked about it earlier on the pod, that ability to either complete the comebacks or really what it was at the beginning of the game, don't dig yourself into too deep of a hole, right? Detroit gets on the board first, you answer, they're able to get that Sider goal at the end of the towards the end of the first period. Okay, you're down by one going into the second. Shane's able to score. You're able to dig yourself then out of the 4-2 lead that Detroit has. Like that's so much more manageable than ending the first period against Calgary down 3-0. Right, last game, and how many games has that been the case where they just haven't been able to kind of catch up? This is what they've needed and what they have missed for the rest of this through most of this season. That's what I was trying to say. Sean, maybe for RJ, but should they not try and lock up Kaka soon? He has unlocked Maddie and is special in his own right. Does he have ARB rights? I know he's an RFA. I do not know off the top of my head if he has ARB rights. Let me see if I can figure that out super quick here. Does have ARB rights, so hopefully it doesn't go to arbitration and everybody's got to go to battle against each other. I think it's one where team RJ's going to say, I already know what RJ's going to say. He's going to say that you want to get as large a sample size as possible. There's really no rush to get a deal done with him, blah blah blah, all of that kind of stuff. I've seen enough. I've talked about it. I've seen enough. I would go ahead and extend Kaapo Kakko soon if I'm the Kraken. I believe in him. I think also if you're able to extend him for something that kind of makes sense with the salary cap going up, I don't think you're going to totally regret locking him up on some sort of longer deal at decent money. I mean, I assume he's not going to be asking for crazy money. He wouldn't be able to. So I got to think that any sort of dollar figure you work out with Kaapo Kakko is going to be pretty reasonable. I would go ahead and do it. One of the reasons why we might not have seen something like this, particularly for a player who has been traded mid-season, a lot of players don't like to negotiate once the season has started. It's possible that Kaapo Kakko is one of those players. It's also possible that he's just trying to settle into Seattle and doesn't want the added distraction of going through contract negotiations. Yes, it's something that his agent would predominantly be handling, but it is one of those things that some guys just feel like if that is kind of looming over their heads, they just don't play as well as they want to, right? It affects them mentally. It's very possible that Kaapo Kakko, especially coming off of the trade mid-season, is just in a place where he just is like, you know what, we'll handle that in the offseason. Let me just focus on playing, getting my game right, enjoying the fact that I'm in a place that's giving me extra minutes and playing me on a top line, and we won't see anything until the offseason. I think that's a reasonable thing, or we'll see them work something out over the Four Nations tournament because they'll just have time. Who knows? You never know. Edward with the super chat. Appreciate all these super chats, everybody. Instead of time to throw in the towel, it was nearly time to throw in the hats. What a game by Shane and Joey in goal. Yes, riffing off our title of the podcast from today. And it was, I mean, Shane's going to get a hat trick at some point, right? Like he's had multiple 2-goal games. We know how dangerous he can be shooting the puck. He very nearly had it in this one, especially I thought that third goal was going to come off that one, kind of bounced in off the glass, and Shane went diving in. He really threaded the needle between two Detroit defenders there later on in the third period. And he kind of got his stick on the puck, wasn't able to get all of it and get it kind of on net there. But I was like, that's that would have been an insane hat-trick goal. That would have been so cool. But just the fact that he was able to make that much of that play happen and make that chance look dangerous at all, I thought was really, really positive. And one of those things that, it just speaks to how skilled and talented he is, because there's just not a lot of guys in the league and certainly on this roster that would have been able to have that chance exist the way it did. Chuck with the super chat. The data on pairings, I have suggested that Shane with Eberle and McCann may be the way to go. Hope Eberle returns soon. Eberle was back being a full participant at practice. We'll see. I guess like fingers crossed for like a realistic time frame might be that first game back after the Four Nations break, assuming no setbacks, things like that. That would be really great to see. And then yes, you've done a wonderful job with all the data that you sent RJ and I's way, and I really enjoy looking at it whenever you send those emails, Chuck. So thank you for those. And then Light here with the super chat. I'll be real, it's objectively funny that Chandler Stevenson has scored over 10% of his career goals this year in Seattle. Thought he was good today. I agree. Like I said, this is one of Chandler Stevenson's better games. There wasn't too much rough stuff defensively. The trip that he took, the tripping penalty, wasn't a great one. It was kind of like a lazy play by Chandler Stevenson, results in that trip. I didn't love that. But how automatic is he in those kind of, they're not really breakaways. They're not really like a one-on-one, but when he can kind of streak down the side of the ice and then slowly start cutting in towards the middle and the defender is just kind of there with him, but not totally pressuring him. We've seen him score, you talked about 10% of his career goals this year in Seattle. I feel like at least 60, 70% of his goals this season have just been on plays that look very similar to that goal that he scored tonight. He's just automatic in those kind of pseudo breakaway one-on-one situations. He really just knows how to, protect the puck, put himself between the defender and the puck so he's able to get a clean shot off. And I credit him too in a situation like that. He's able to pick his head up, look at the goaltender, and find the weak spots, right? Like it's not like he's just doing one move consistently and it's working or anything like that. He really is finding the holes and scoring on them. And I just think that that's been really impressive. And I will absolutely give him the credit that he is due for making those plays happen. Let's see. Going back over here in the chat. Ethan, if you're going to lose fun. Also, that Kane shootout goal was sick. Can't fault Joey on that one. Yeah, you can't. It's Patrick Kane just did, like I said, Patrick Kane things there. But I'm totally with you, Ethan. If you're going to lose fun. That is the way to do it 1,000%. And that is what they did tonight. And I think as long as the Kraken kind of play that way, we could all be proud of the team. We'll all have fun enjoying the team, going to games, all that kind of stuff. And you get these overtime points. They matter. I really just, I can't fault anything with this group. Milo, we want Adam in the shootout. Yes, Adam Larson. His day's got to be coming, right? It's got to be. I don't know. Maybe we'll see in like game 82 if it goes to a shootout. Maybe they'll do something, right? If the Kraken are either in or mathematically eliminated or whatever the scenario is, maybe we can get something like that happen. As Tortorella once said, this is from Jeremy, get rid of the shootout, play 3-on-3 until a team dies. Look, to be honest, I don't know that 3-on-3, if it was going to be endless 3-on-3, I do think that not many of those games are going to go past 5 minutes, because I think a lot of the reason we see as many games go to a shootout from 3-on-3 is because teams will play it very conservative. They're going to try to get to the shootout. They don't want it to turn into a total back and forth affair. I do think the amount of games to get to, say, 10 minutes of 3-on-3 overtime would be ridiculously small, I think, the percentage. And so I do think that would be fun. And I think if teams know that there's no shootout to kind of hold out for, they're gonna have to go for it, right? And it would be a lot of fun. So I'm there with you, Jeremy, and with Torts. James, I'm not even mad having Beniers, Shane, and Kaka in the shootout. Got to let the kids show what they got again and reward them, right? They're going to do all that good work and, build up their confidence, get that success and everything. Like that's a coach rewarding that. It adds to the confidence that they're building off of their performance tonight. I loved it. I love it. I'm all for it. Even though they didn't look great in the shootout, I think I think it's still the right call there. Sean KG, Shane Wright had 14:56 of ice time with just 3:14 and 5 shifts in the second period. Dan, I'm begging you. I'm sure we'll hear it from RJ as well in there. Like I said, it is tough if you're going to have the two centers ahead of him in the lineup both get 21 minutes. And look, I wouldn't take away minutes from Matty Beniers tonight. And like I said, I thought Chandler Stevenson actually played a pretty good game. I don't know that I take many minutes out of his 21 away to give to Shane Wright. It's just one of those things. Shane's not going to be out there on the PK. Kraken were on the PK a decent amount. Both of those other players are going to play PK minutes, so that helps add to their totals and take away from Shane's chances. And then with the Kraken only having the one power play, that limits, again, special teams usage with Shane Wright. I do feel like at the times where we were seeing a lot of 5-on-5 play, Shane was out there. And again, I will credit Dan for giving Shane the overtime time as well and the shootout spot there. But I understand. I understand everything. DJ Bone, we went to the beer hall and attended this fun game. Gotta love seeing Shane score. Love that you went to the beer hall. Hope you had a great time and hope you had a fun time at the game, DJ Boone. I was happy with the shootout picks. Just sucks that it went the way it did. From B, agree. Chris, I'll spare you the story, but I'm a Kraken fan, but followed the Islanders for a few years in the late teens. You could save some worry if you know you're not going to win in the shootout. I know exactly the teams that you're talking about, Chris, and I know what you're talking about there. I think this is a group that could get better at the shootout. I think guys like Matty, Shane having more opportunities in those roles, that's going to be the thing. And then with the prospects that they have coming up, they're going to have some guys that are going to be really fun to watch in shootouts in years ahead. I think of a Berkeley Catton and how much fun he would be. I think of Carson Rykoff, how much fun he'd be in a shootout. Like I think they're kind of shootout specialist skill guys. Edward Chalet, right? We saw what he could do in the shootout, the World Juniors, right? Keeping his team in the bronze medal game, winning the bronze medal in the shootout. Best hands in the organization. I said it on the last prospect chat with Edward Chalet. I think the guys are coming that are going to be the shootout specialists for the Kraken. I just don't know that they're on the roster yet for them, but the future does look bright in terms of guys that they can send out there in future shootouts. We just might have to still wait another year or two for it. Shane deployments and how limited it is continues to enrage me, but we've talked that to death at this point. I was going to say we'll leave it for RJ, and then we'll get there. Jenna, Monty would have won in overtime 3 different times tonight if not for a little puck luck. Lol. That is true. I mean, he was trying going up high. He was trying going 5-hole. He was trying everything that he could to pick up a goal tonight. And credit to him for sticking with it. Monty is just such an incredible guy to have out there, especially in the 3-on-3 overtime. That 200-foot game that he has is just so special. And the huge save breaking up the 2-on-1 late in the third period too, right? When the game is tied. That, I mean, one of the plays of the year for Brandon Montour there. I thought that was just a huge play from him, and it was great to see him. Christian, see what happens when Shane doesn't do a Michigan spinorama on the shootout. He did say that he thought Dan would, Dan probably wouldn't appreciate it if he did that. Maybe he didn't want to lose his chance in the shootout or any chance of going out there ever again on the shootout if he did that back at the skills showcase. That was what he talked about. But yeah, it would have been so cool if he had pulled that out and tried to do it. It would have been so awesome. Yes, that was so good. James, watching Kaka body defenders in the offensive zone and on the boards while controlling the puck is exactly what this team needs. So refreshing to watch. It is. I mean, he plays, with his size, he utilizes it. It's just so what the Kraken need, and it's so evident with him coming in that it's what the Kraken have been missing, and the fact that they haven't had players capable of doing that, and how important it really is in the NHL. And having him do that, it's just so special to see, because I've wanted to see it for so long with this team. Size, as much as I think people maybe overvalue size in the NHL, it is a tool, and it is a tool that when used properly has extreme benefits. And I think, we see that with Capo Caco and the way that he's able to create space for his teammates, the way he's able to protect the puck and take it to areas that other guys on this team can't necessarily take it to. And it's size, but it's also strength, and it's also hockey IQ. It's him understanding what angles to use to protect the puck if he's going to drive certain lanes, stuff like that, right? Because we saw Jared McCann do that on that one where he takes it to the net and then kind of, gets pushed into the net and kind of felt a little awkward there into Cam Talbot and the net. But that was a great kind of drive to the net from Jared McCann. Jared McCann's not the biggest guy out there, but it's one of those, if you know the angle to take, if you can see the angle on the defender, you know the angle to protect the puck, you can go ahead and make that play. And I really appreciate seeing plays like that from the Kraken, because that's, I really think, something that they've missed a lot. And there's been a lot of opportunities, left on the board in the offensive zone these last couple seasons that were potentially there if they were going to, make a power move. And I love having Capo Caco around doing that stuff. Sean with the super chat here. 3-on-3 needs to be 10 minutes at least. I could see there would be obvious pushback from a lot of people in the league. I feel like, just because you don't want the games to go on forever. I know that's something that certain organizations care about from a broadcasting standpoint. The national broadcasts certainly care about that, because then all of a sudden you're potentially pushing and messing up the television schedule for those channels. So, having the full 10 minutes of overtime might make it go a little bit too long. I don't think it would. I've heard that from people when it's been brought up. The other big thing, and this is where you get pushback from coaches, organizations, and potentially also the PA, is just how exhausting it is. And if you are a team that's going to find themselves in overtime a lot, like at Vancouver, where they've played, I think, 14 overtime games this season, just the wear and tear of that, the fact that, it's that much extra brutal. It's that much extra brutal if you're on the road and then you've got to go and get on a plane and you're just exhausted, all of that kind of stuff. It can just be a lot on them. And we'll I don't know. We'll have to see. I also wonder, as like last year in the postseason, Brock Besser kind of dealt with a blood clotting issue. And I know that there's been lots of talk around players being dehydrated, getting on planes, all of that kind of stuff. If you did have longer overtime periods, I do wonder if that would become more of an issue for guys. If that would be something. I think from an entertainment standpoint, it's the way to go. Like, I'm with you there, Sean, but I do think like there is a reason Tort's idea hasn't stuck with everybody. And I do think that those are things there. Let's see. And here's another one from Sean. Why can't we not just appreciate what Shane is doing? And he's been so great with the time that he's getting. And I do think that is that is important. And again, like, this is that is the big thing, is he is playing well. He's playing well with the minutes that he's getting. Yes, he may be sheltered. Yes, we want to see him get more, but he is still playing really well. He's putting up points. He has still been a different player since that 3-game stretch where he was scratched. And I'm definitely happy every time I get to see him and see him have the success that he has. And you saw how fired up he was, right? After both of those goals, he was, I don't want to say he looked mean, but like he had that, like, yeah, like, I'm like, we're doing this. And he was like, we got to get back in this game. And this is what we're got to do. You know what I mean? Like, they weren't like straight celebrations from him. They were very much like, his face is serious. His face is, it's a stern, it's a hard expression, like whatever it is you want to call it. He is really, feeling it in that moment. And I liked seeing that, because that was like, okay, that competitive fire is in him right now. He is feeling it, and he feels confident in his ability to make a difference in this game. And I do think that just like with Maddie and seeing that wiggle back in his game and how comfortable he's starting to look. And he reminds me of, back when he was younger and first coming into the league. I think seeing that expression on Shane's face after both of those goals, it brought back that same emotion for me. And yes, he didn't have a ton of ice time, but the fact that he does score 2, he does have that expression. He feels like he's contributing. He feels like he's feeling it right now. That is a very big and important thing to happen here. Burnt Creme, Capo is definitely going to ask for crazy money when his agent tells him about what some of these guys are getting overpaid. I don't know that we'll have to that we'll necessarily see that. But yeah, maybe. And Ethan, yes, pointing out Capo might not have time to deal with it over the break. Isn't he playing for Finland? He is. I just meant like general managers might have more time to deal with it just because they don't have all the games happening and everything. So if Capo is open to having his agent negotiating with Ron Francis, that might provide a better window for negotiations to happen, even though Capo is playing in that Four Nations tournament. You are correct, Ethan. Milo pointing out Kako's agent is also the agent for Mikko Rantanen, Patrick Laine, and Leon Draisaitl. Neat. Good agent to have, and boy, if you're that agent, that's some good clientele to have. It's definitely some good ones. And yes, we've talked about this in the past. I believe on Deep Dive or somewhere about this. But as Milo's pointing out, also same agent as David Goyette, Billy Otavainen, and Ty Cartier. Getting RJ to join us here. RJ took a little bit. I hope that means the team was feeling okay at least.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't the happiest atmosphere. It was shorter answers from the players, but then just a little bit of time before we got Dan, and I think some longer answers from Dan. So that's kind of why the time breakdown on this one. And Dylan, I want to say before I get started, though, you were saying earlier today the Kraken didn't get enough loser points. You wanted to talk about it on the podcast. They answered you here.
Yeah,
I'm sure you've been told that before already in this post game,
No, but I've brought it up. I did not need anybody else to bring it up. I made sure to say it. But no, this was the kind of game that if they had been playing like this all year, right? You keep it limited. It's only a 1-goal deficit after the first, and you got one in there. You had tied it for a little while before that late goal from Seider. Like those are the games that if you play that way over a full season, you're in a different spot in the standings.
Yeah, given that they have this comeback superpower that they apparently have, this is the kind of game that does work with that because they kept it in range. And I mean, really, this one, a lot of it was special teams based. And so you look at it 5-on-5 and they were okay. I think good but not great would be my estimation 5-on-5. They still had some major chances that they allowed. I mean, I think that probably the most egregious one in the third period was that 2-on-1 where Dunn and Larson just got carved up, but Joey Decord makes an excellent save to keep him in the game. Joey was, himself again, still making great saves. But I mean, Todd McClellan even talked about it. He said this was a special teams game. We get those goals on the power play. The power play influenced one, and then the shootout, which is just another form of special teams, and that's really was the key thing that Todd McClellan had to say about this game, because I stopped over to him just to see what takeaways he might have before hearing from Dan Bylsma.
And he didn't throw you out? There wasn't like 4 security people to keep you from being within 15 feet of him?
There were 4 security people around. I think they were probably side-eyeing me just in case, but I was good. No, I didn't ask him a question or anything. The way they did it, they just had the TV reporter just ask him a few questions, and that was it. So it's a little bit different than some of the away coaches that we've seen. But that was his main takeaway. It was just it was kind of a special teams-based game. And then, of course, Dan talked about the special teams aspect of it as well. And on the PK, he said he felt like on the penalty kill, when they actually could kind of square up and get going on the PK, they were okay. It's just they had those couple face-off plays, and he did break them down a little bit. He said on the first one, there was a little bit of a kind of a pick play where Stevens couldn't quite get up to the point fast enough, and then they were able to get the shot through. And then on the second one, he said it just kind of pops out to the guy, and that face-off like that is a battle, and we lost that battle. And so there wasn't too much really analysis to put into those because they just happened so quickly on those plays, really. But special teams were a focus, and then also just talking about the progression from some of the younger guys, because that was another big takeaway from this one is the young guys continued to look good. Matty Beniers with a goal, Shane Wright with 2 goals in this one. We talked to Shane after the game, and he said that he's been told to try and shoot more. So, and Dan mentioned first thing with Shane. I don't think he knew what Shane had said, but he said shooting mentality, first thing with him, trying to get him shooting the puck a little bit more. So I think we saw that tonight, and hopefully we see it going forward.
Yeah, that would be awesome to see. And he played a fantastic game. We've certainly talked all about it here in post game. I want to ask lots of talk around the shootout lineup that the Kraken ended up going with, questions maybe around Matty Beniers and why he's necessarily part of that. I like Dan kind of going with the players who were playing well in this one and kind of rewarding the effort that they had put in earlier, right? Matty Beniers gets a goal, Shane gets a pair of goals, Kaka with another good game. I don't hate kind of rewarding that effort from them and trying to add to their confidence a little bit there.
I don't hate it, but only because it's not crucial to win. The whole podcast today was about, throw in the towel and get reps for the younger guys. And so that's why I don't mind it. If the Kraken needed to win, if this was crucial to win this game, then I would have gone with other players because I don't feel, again, from watching the guys in practice and everything, I don't feel as confident about those three as I do about some other guys in the lineup. And I know I have more controversial takes on who those guys should be. But heck, even a Chandler Stevenson, where, look, I'm not a big defender of Chandler Stevenson, but somehow he's been able to score on breakaways or these looks where he's coming in and clear on the goalie, and it doesn't always look pretty. Sometimes it looks kind of silly, like, again, it did in this game, just sliding it under Talbot, but he's been effective at least. And so that's someone I would have put out there. And it goes along with who's being successful in the game. But if they were really trying to win, but again, I don't hate it just because, these are the younger guys. You get them reps. The season's over anyway. Just do that.
If you're referring to your controversial takes being to use the defenseman, I can tell you everybody in chat is on board with that. I think the only people who see that as controversial is, really the man who makes that decision, Dan Bausma.
Yep. And Dave Haxtell somewhere out in North Dakota.
Yeah, that too. Yes. Coaches everywhere think that it's controversial, but otherwise it feels like everybody else is kind of on board with that one. I did talk a little bit about, maybe you throw Chandler Stevenson in there just because it feels like so many of his goals this year have been those pseudo breakaways. What do you call those plays, RJ? Because it's not really a one-on-one. It's not really a breakaway.
I mean, like, right? Partial breakaway is the way I've usually heard it described there, where he just kind of has a bit of an angle. But I don't know, it just feels like he's been automatic. And watching that play develop too, I turned to our buddy Charles and I'm like, it's Stevenson. He's automatic. This is going in. And then he puts it in. So it just, I don't know. It feels like he has that energy right now. And I see Viren saying he's 1 for 6 career in shootouts. Shootouts don't care about numbers or logic or anything like that. It's all vibes based. Yeah. I mean, what Jordan Eberle has great career shootout numbers, and them with the Kraken just not very good. So I don't know. Yeah,
it's a shootout. Like I said, I'm fine with just going with the guys who played well in that one and that you're kind of feeling. Like I just don't. I think that's as good as anything in this. Your thoughts on longer overtime, 3-on-3 overtime, because that was also talked about. Maybe a 10-minute period, or John Tortorella's it goes until someone just scores.
I think both of those are preferable to the current setup. I also think, if you need an end time where you can't have them playing endless overtime, then just bring back ties. I'm okay with that. But the overtime, I mean, it's interesting because I think the Red Wings did not play very smart in that overtime. It seemed like every time they had the puck, they were just trying to skate it in, rip it from wherever they were, and just take a shot. But it needlessly gave up possession a lot. And I think that benefited the Kraken. I think the Kraken were much smarter about how the overtime period was played. They just couldn't convert.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. Chuck, which teams, if any, do you see being the biggest suitors for Yanni and for Turbo? Do you think that Eberle's return will coincide with Turbo's departure? Now, that's an interesting one. I know we talked about, earlier, RJ and I talked about it earlier on this post game, Eberle maybe coming back after the Four Nations tournament, giving him a little bit more time to kind of work back in. Maybe, you do hold him out until that spot opens up in the lineup with a trade of somebody.
Yeah, I mean, that is something that you could do, and there'll be plenty of opportunities to move, like Yanni Gourde, Brandon Tanev, and it might coincide with the return of Jordan Eberle. As for which teams are interested, I mean, gosh, pick a playoff team, and they could be interested in either one of those guys. I think they'd be great fits in a lot of different spots just because of how versatile they are. I mean, for Yanni Gourde, it's a little different with the injury. You're going to want teams that are a little bit higher in the standings, as we talked about a little bit on the podcast today. Although I could see even a Tampa trying to get him back if they can, or a New Jersey. I think he'd be a great fit there, with Hischier and Hughes and Gourde down the middle would be super dangerous. And then Tanev, just pick a playoff team. I mean, he's a fit anywhere. You can just throw him in the bottom 6. He'll do what he does.
Odds that we see one of them wearing a Toronto sweater on Thursday. Well,
on Thursday,
it would have to be Tanev, but
Yeah,
Does Ron
Tanev.
get to work? Does Ron get to work before that game starts?
I don't think so. We'll go 5%. Maybe there's something there. I could see Tanev going to Toronto, but before the game on Thursday, I don't know.
Yeah. And then Brooke asking, why do we continue to put Berkey out in overtime and onto Onslaught? Kind of agreeing with that one. He is the one kind of head scratcher. And I don't think all of the, him chasing the puck way back into the Kraken zone was necessarily on him. Like that one kind of awkward give and go from Montour. I totally understand why he was not expecting Montour just to throw that puck right back at him. I think that was a questionable one. But on a night where you do see like Shane Wright out there in overtime, and it did feel like Dan was kind of going with players who played better in the game, I do think it was just because he was part of that Shane Wright line, and he did, kind of contribute there. And it was quietly one of Berkey's, better games in the sense that I didn't really notice him being bad. So in that sense, maybe it means it's one of his better games. I do wonder if him being out there in the overtime in this one was just because he had played solid earlier on.
I think that's part of the rationale. Also, you'd think 3-on-3 would be a good match for Burakovsky's skill set, right? Skilled with the puck, fast, he can make passes, he can be a playmaker, at least on paper. I just think, the way things are going for him right now, he's kind of broken to an extent, and I think we saw that in overtime where he just wasn't dynamic in the way that you would expect from him, and the same way he hasn't been dynamic 5-on-5.
Yeah, no, I think that's just, we're late enough in the season. You have enough of a sample size on everybody to make these kind of decisions, I feel like. And unless you're just going to go based on vibes for the game, I think that's the way it is. The Kraken core, I liked it in overtime, and I, for one, did not want that point from Sean. I think this, probably ends well for most people, RJ. They don't get that second point, but they do have all the young players looking good, and they do play an exciting and fun game. And that was really kind of what we started off talking post game about, was just that this was just a fun game to watch. It was entertaining.
It was really entertaining, and just the energy in the building too. I mean, there was one moment in the third period, I think after it was tied, where the Red Wings turned it over at the far blue line, and it just turned into a kind of a 3-on-2 rush for the Kraken. But the pop just at the turnover, when it was clear the Kraken were getting a 3-on-2 rush, which nothing super special, they didn't turn it into anything, but the pop from the crowd as they started heading up ice was awesome. No, I love the energy in the building, and you know what? I think kind of the 60-40 crowd made it even better, because there were dueling let's go Red Wings, let's go Kraken chants. There was a lot of red in the building, and I think that actually kind of amped up the Kraken fans that were here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I totally, it seemed like a great one. I said it earlier on the broadcast, like this one, I was really jealous that I was not able to be in the building for this one, for sure.
And one more thing on the loser point that was mentioned too, if the league wouldn't frown upon it and get mad, because I'm sure they were, this would have been a great game to just pull your goalie in overtime. You don't want the loser point. I mean, you could even justify it by saying, look, we need 2 points if we're going to get back into the playoff hunt, right? And just try pulling your goalie. I still think there would be people complaining around the league, but I would have done it.
Oh, yeah. Anybody who has to deal with the Red Wings and whatever position they're in would be complaining about it for sure. But let them complain. Like, that's the other thing. I don't understand this about hockey. Like, just let him complain. Big deal.
Yeah.
Like, okay, cool. Now you've just created beef and good storylines for the next time you got to play them.
Yeah, and again, it's not like you're cheating. Like, it's the whole thing is punitive. Like, if you don't like the result, then change the rule.
Right. Like, the NHL used to be a league in which coaches, if they thought a rule was dumb, would really do ridiculous stuff like that to point out how dumb that rule was. And I do wish we were back in that time.
And Brooke asking, like, why would the league not like pulling the goalie in overtime? I think they would see it as a form of intentional tanking for the Kraken, where, yes, you could win the game, of course, but if they lost the game, if they won, I feel like there wouldn't be as much of a complaint because you took a risk, it paid off. But if they lost, I think they might view that as intentional tanking because you forfeit the loser point.
Right. It's intentional tanking there. Teams that are, chasing the Red Wings for the wild card spot that the Red Wings currently occupy in the Eastern Conference are going to be like, they just gave them this extra point. That's not fair to us, right? Like, it would just be controversial for a lot of those reasons. A lot of people talking about a potential Berkey trade in here, RJ. I just don't know why anybody would trade for him.
No, certainly nobody's taking the full freight on that contract. Even at 50% retained, it's kind of an iffy proposition. Maybe with the cap going up, you could find a taker if you retain 50% and attach some kind of asset to it. But he's going to be really expensive to move to the point where it's just, I don't think seems really feasible. Credit to Ron Francis if he can make it work, but buyout just seems a lot more likely.
Yeah. And then Veronica, as long as we don't do playoff overtime, I'm good. Yes, that I definitely think we will not see. We will not see just endless games in the regular season there. And Jeremy asking, the goalie pull in overtime happened last year, right?
Yes, that was last season. It was the Minnesota Wild who were trying to claw their way back into the playoff position. And ultimately, I mean, it ended up working for them once, but they didn't get into the playoffs. But that one, at least it felt like they really had something to lose and they were taking a more calculated risk, whereas the Kraken are so far out of it, it might look like just draft position tanking on the other end.
Right. And then Jeffrey saying, I almost thought about them pulling Joey when they had that face off with like 6 seconds left or whatever in overtime. Like a situation like that, I think
you should do it. That you should totally do it. Get the executor. And if they somehow hit the empty net, like what are you going to say? Like teams will sometimes pull their goalie when there's a couple seconds left offensive zone face off just in a period. That's not unheard of. So, I wouldn't have had a problem with it at all.
Yes. Yes.
And I like the idea from Bryce. Instead of pulling Joey, send him out as our 4th offensive player. If the rules allowed it, I'd be on board, but unfortunately they don't.
If he could play the puck past center, think of how dangerous he could be.
He said on a podcast, I believe, he thinks he'd score a few goals.
Yeah.
Or get a few points anyway. No, maybe not goals, but he said he'd get a few points every season.
I believe that. I definitely think that would be the case for sure. Jeffrey had to join late. Is Kaka their best playmaking / passing forward? It seems like he's done a great job setting up a lot of goals since he's arrived. It's actually interesting, RJ, because I don't know that I would have if you asked me who's the best passer on this team, who's the best playmaker, I don't know that my mind would immediately go to Kaka. But you could definitely make the argument that over the last month and a half or so, he has been.
Since he's joined the team, yes, I think he has been. I really do. And I mean, you see it how in the way that he's finding guys. There have been so many 2-on-1s with either him, Jaden Schwartz, Matty Beniers, where he's able to set up these perfect cross-ice passes and be on the receiving end of them sometimes too. But then the way that he's able to use his body to open up passing lanes, the way he was, where he kind of bodied his way around the net. And even though the first pass didn't get across, it comes back to him. And he's just able to find Matty tape to tape. He is really, really good at that kind of stuff. And at least 5-on-5, maybe on the power play, you could give an edge to, say, a Chandler Stevenson. Yeah, because he's had some good passes on the power play. But 5-on-5, Kaka all day for me.
Yeah, I think the only two, it depends on if we're counting defensemen, because maybe you can then bring in Vince Dunn or Brandon Montour.
Actually, that's true. Yeah, you're right.
If you're just talking about the forward group, I think Chandler Stevenson gets the nod on the power play there. The only other person that I would kind of maybe put in there with Kaka would be Oliver Bjorkstrand, just because his hockey IQ is just so high. He'll just make stuff happen sometimes that you're just like, oh, I didn't know that you could even see that out there. But yeah, no, Kaka has been great, and we definitely talked about that sequence of him using his body to create that space, and more guys need to do it, RJ. I also, I didn't call out. I gave credit to Jared McCann for kind of doing that power move to the net, trying to pick up a goal.
That was really bad at first glance. I thought his face just smacked right into the post. The way his head
it very much
does
back. Look like it. I do think it did. Looking at,
I don't know how he would bounce back up and wasn't just bloodied from that if it did catch it. Maybe it hit the visor. I think that's probably what happened.
Yeah.
But I was really worried for him at first. But again, love that he drove the net.
Right, and that's what I was referring to when I said it looked great, and you're like, it looked bad.
Yeah,
two different parts of the play that we're talking about there. Board. So much talk about Berkey in this one and everything, and Light pointing out Chandler Stevenson does almost have 30 assists. He is good at it. Talking about the passing there. Let's see. B, he said he believed he could score at least 5 goals in a season if they let him. Talking about Joey Daccord there. That would be so much fun. It really would be. Let's see here. Jeffrey agreeing. I was worried for McCann there, facing the crossbar. It looked like it was not a great moment. That's for sure. And then Light, I believe, is talking about Kaka about playing on a 62-point full season pace with the Kraken, which, I mean, that checks out.
Yeah, just a little under point per game. I think it's 17 points in 22 games for him with the Kraken. I mean, that's a pretty darn good pace. He can keep that up.
Yeah. They'll take it. And then I know, I believe it was Light in the Discord who had this, RJ, because Matty Beniers scores his 12th goal this season tonight. How many games did it take him to do that last year?
What, he only ended up with like 15, right?
Yes.
So let's say 64.
It was, I believe, 71 was the answer.
Wow.
So on a better pace than he was last year.
I'd say so.
Matty Beniers there. Yeah. Definitely coming for a good one. And correct me if I'm wrong there, Light, on that, but I believe that's what I remember. Yeah, 71. That was a good one. And then super chat here from Elizabeth. I'm inching my way to a win. Let's hope for the Leafs game. The Leafs game does the trick. I want to get rid of my L streak. That would be fantastic. Kraken got to do it for Elizabeth. Like, don't do it for the standings. Don't do it to try to make the playoffs. Don't do it for anything. Got to do it for Elizabeth.
Yeah, and you'd be among the first people to see the Kraken beat the Leafs in this building, too. They still have not done that yet, so that'd be really exciting. They're one of the two teams the Kraken have not beat at Climate Pledge Arena. I feel it coming. I don't know. I think this is the time they get over the hump against Toronto, and it'll be because you're in the building. And also, I got to come down and meet up with you at some point, too. I got to see you. I'm sorry I wasn't there last game to meet up with you, but we'll make it happen for the Toronto game.
Yeah, and hopefully I'll be there. I've already had one flight canceled on me because of weather. We'll see. I'm supposed to be coming in. Nice 7 a.m. flight out of Burbank, RJ, to head back up to Seattle. I'm going to be in great shape for that game 12 hours later. It's going to be good.
See if those like press box seats like lay flat. Can you just take 3 of them and just sleep for a bit?
Oh, if I could do that, you know how bad I've wished some days for my back I could just lay down.
Oh yeah, that would be the thing to do.
On the press bridge. We need to find a little space for me to do that.
They have little cubbies for the backpacks.
They do. I should just sit in there. Like a micro hotel or something, and they have those like little beds.
Milo in Japan.
Exactly. Jared McCann ever benefited from the former Leafs curse? I know he didn't technically play for them, but he's so snake bitten and a former Leaf. It has to happen, right?
If I remember correctly, and this was at least a couple years old that I checked these splits, that Jared McCann, either he was really good against the Leafs, had good production, but I remember he had like insane numbers against his former team. So I think Vancouver, Pittsburgh, I don't know about Toronto because he never played for them, but I know against his former teams he had like really good career splits, well above the other teams in the league.
Yeah, so I am looking.
Yeah, so Byron, as a Kraken, McCann has 4 goals, 3 assists against the Leafs. That's pretty good.
Yeah, no, that is pretty good. I was just pulling up his career splits there, but should have known it was not needed.
Can't beat Byron to that. No,
I can't. No, definitely not. B. Canner's still getting assists at least. I think the goals will come soon enough. Once he gets one, that's not an empty netter. I feel like it'll start going in way more. It does feel like one of those that like once the dam breaks, he's going to be good. RJ, what did you think though of that line of him and Berkey with Shane Wright and maybe Jared McCann? It felt like he was helping out a little bit more defensively, maybe trying to facilitate rush chances, put Shane Wright into that spot where he's going to be able to be more part of the rush instead of the other way around, which is what we've seen through most of this season. It certainly seemed to agree with Shane Wright tonight, especially if also he's kind of gotten the mandate again of he needs to shoot the puck more. Maybe that will, limit what Jared McCann does here in the short term, if that's, kind of what he's doing. But I thought that line actually looked really good tonight.
Yeah, I agree. And I like what Jared McCann was doing on that line and kind of trying to free up some of the offense for Shane Wright so he can make more of a push for it. And I wonder if that's an adjustment that, given where they are in the standings and the changes they need to make, I think going forward, that maybe is a little bit more intentional too. We also know that Shane was told to shoot the puck more, and maybe McCann is kind of in on that. Burakovsky wasn't terrible. Like, I think he's a very replaceable part of that line, but he didn't stand out in a negative way.
No, he didn't. And I was going to say overtime notwithstanding. I'll do a quick last call here for everybody for the last 5 minutes. I mean, we are already starting to talk about that game against the Leafs, RJ. I feel like if the Kraken just kind of bring that same mentality from this game to that one, start on time, it can be anybody's game. It's just going to be if this team decides not to start on time, kind of do the same, song and dance that they've done all this year. The Leafs are a team that could definitely take advantage of that. They could jump on you early, and then you're just going to be right back in one of those spots where you have to come back from a 3 or 4 goal deficit, and that's just so hard to do.
Yeah, and this is the kind of game that I think could get out of hand really fast if you allow the Leafs better players to get grade A chances. If you turn the puck over in your own zone to, say, an Austin Matthews, he is going to put the puck in the back of the net more often than not. And so the other thing, too, staying out of the box, because that was an element of this game. And Dan said we knew that we needed to stay out of the box going into this one, and we didn't. And so I think against that Leafs power play, you also know you have to stay out of the penalty box. And so that's going to be a key, especially early on in the game.
Yeah, definitely.
As I see all the conversation in chat.
I was going to say, did you see this? Well, for those who can't see it in chat, Chandler Stevenson has scored only 1 less point this calendar year than Connor McDavid, RJ. And so, definitely all of the McWho, McDavid wash, Stevenson goat in here. Milo pointing out Stevenson does have more Stanley Cups than Connor McDavid as well. Do we have to take it all back, RJ?
Try telling us like a month and a half ago that this would be in the chat right now. It was McDavid who? Chandler Stevenson's the guy. I mean, you know what? He's producing. He certainly is producing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I'm gonna go myself and check the games played numbers on those two, because I know McDavid had the suspension, but
that's what Jeremy's saying. Wasn't McDavid suspended for 3 games, lol?
But I love those selective stats that are really fun,
Selective stats are really fun. And if the games were close, I would love to ask Chandler Stevenson about that.
Yeah, that's true. All it takes, is if it's just one that, or like off of a good win or something where he scores, if he had the game winner in overtime tonight, after the tying goal, that's the time.
Yeah. Yes, definitely.
And then, because then he'd be tied, I think, with McDavid, or we say one more or one less.
One less than McDavid.
Okay, so then he'd be tied with McDavid in the calendar year, and then you can really set up the question real nice.
Yep.
He doesn't have to be like, oh yeah, I'm better than that guy. Like, well, I guess I'm as good,
Yeah.
Although Stevenson would be the last guy to give us a fun personality answer like that, though. Sorry, but
I think if you ask him off the cuff, not in a scrum, I'm with you. Scrum. I think the one-on-one stuff, just like in the locker room, he's a little bit more open about that.
Yeah, without a camera in his face, he might give you something good.
Yeah, as is the case with just about every NHL player.
That's true. Yes, that is true.
And Kylie, Stevenson has two more cups than McDavid, which is 2. And then we could close on this one from Tammy. Stevenson has gained my trust at least a little. I definitely think Chandler Stevenson, has stepped up. We've talked about this over the last month and a half, it feels like, and kind of what he's done. And yes, he's up to 10% of his career goals, RJ, have come as a member of the Seattle Kraken.
Crazy stat. Another good stat to just throw out there. We could have Chandler Stevenson stats time, to kick off the next post game. Find your best crazy Chandler Stevenson stats. Let us have it.
Yes, and I just love this. Light Berkey also has 2 more cups than McDavid, but no one wants to talk about that. And Carl and our Vezina winners in the AHL.
Vezina finalist.
But it isn't a finalist, yes. But yeah, it is interesting there. All right, I'm going to let you do to take us out here, RJ, talking about Queen Anne Beer Hall, because I mentioned the new location and everything, but I know you were kind of there for the festivities as this 3rd location was announced yesterday.
That's right. I was one of a select group to go to their official announcement at Queen Anne Beer Hall, the Queen Anne location, the other day, where they talked about the new location will be the 3rd location, and it is the Hall on Occidental. And if you see the mock-ups of the building, I mean, I don't know if Dylan like put it up on here, but you'll recognize it immediately if you've been by T-Mobile Park. It's right across the street, perfect location if you're going to a Mariners game, to a Seahawks game, and it's awesome. They're doing a lot of like renovations on the building and kind of building a lot of the stuff from scratch. They're going to have like a quick service like bar and everything, so you can they'll be able to serve a ton of drinks. You could even just place your order online. They're working on getting that technology in there. You can place your order online, stop by, get your drink real quick, and drink it fast and head on over to the game, or after the game, of course, stop by. They're going to also have a couple separate like event rooms, which, I mean, that's cool for us, you know, if we want to do watch parties where, and they talked about, you know, the location in Queen Anne. It's really cool that it's this big communal setting and everything. You got the long tables, but it does make it a little bit more difficult sometimes for like, you know, private events or watch parties or things like that, you know, as we found out. But they're going to have separate event rooms as well at the new location. And so when that is open, we're certainly going to be looking into that. Grand opening, I don't think they have an exact date yet, but it's going to be in May, it looks like. So very soon, you know, in time for, say, the Stanley Cup Finals, or, you know, the last bit of the hockey season. Then, of course, with the Mariners, they'll be in full swing at that time. So it's going to be a really cool location. Can't wait to go there in person once it's all done. And of course, Dylan, you and I, they already said we are invited to the grand opening. Can't wait.
Perfect. Yeah, no, can't wait. And yeah, being able to, you know, do Stanley Cup Finals watch party or something with everybody, even just a couple playoff watch parties with everybody, would be just so much fun. Be able to keep that community going even after the Kraken season is most likely over.
I think we can.
A chance. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I think that's a fantastic location and choice for them. It should be wonderful. Want to thank everybody for joining us. Thanks everybody who gave the super chats. Really appreciate all those as always. And we will see you all on Thursday after that game against the Maple Leafs.